If you want to get ahead of curve on what's happening with the U.S. economy, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Okay, so let's unpack this. The U.S. economy is facing some serious headwinds right now. And a really big question is will the economy be strong enough to power through these huge job cuts that are being pushed by the Trump administration's Department of the Government Efficiency, the DOGE Commission? To really understand what's happening, we need to look at the latest figures on job cuts, especially the upcoming February jobs report. And that's where things get really interesting. February 2025 saw a staggering 172,017 job cuts announced by U.S.-based employers. Now, to put that into perspective, that's the highest number for February since 2009. It actually surpasses even the peak of the pandemic back in July 2020. And if we look at the total for the first 2 months of 2025, the picture gets even more bleak. 221,812 job cuts, making it the worst start to a year since 2009. Now you might be thinking, hold on, haven't there been government job cuts before? What makes this so different? Well, what makes this wave of job cuts so worrisome is the sheer scale and speed at which they're happening. The DOGE Commission, with its mandate to shrink the federal government, is really driving this surge. In February alone, 62,242 jobs were cut across 17 government agencies. That's a whopping 41,311% increase compared to the same period last year. Adding to the uncertainty, a court order temporarily stopped the firing of 200,000 probationary employees. But even with that pause, the total number of government jobs lost is still expected to climb significantly. And here's where it gets really concerning. The impact of DOGE goes far beyond those directly employed by the federal government. Think of it like a stone thrown into a pond, creating ripples that spread outward. Private sector companies that rely on government contracts are also feeling the squeeze. Funding freezes and contract cancellations are forcing them to make cuts. For instance, DAI Global LLC and Encompass LLC, both government contractors, have already had to lay off hundreds of employees. But it doesn't stop there. The ripple effects extend even further, impacting universities, nonprofits, and service industries that depend on federal workers and the money they spend in their communities. Imagine a local restaurant near a federal building. Fewer workers means fewer customers for lunch, impacting their revenue. Or a university that relies on government grants for research. Funding cuts could mean delays in critical projects, or even job losses for researchers. This widespread uncertainty is forcing economists to reassess their 2025 job growth projections. Some experts are predicting that total job losses could exceed 500,000 by the year's end. To give you an idea of the magnitude, that could potentially wipe out a quarter of the job growth we saw in 2024. Now, you might be wondering, where does the February jobs report fit into all of this? Well, it's expected to show continued job growth, with analysts forecasting 170,000 increase in non-farm payrolls. Here's the catch. This report might not fully capture the impact of DOGE, as the data was collected before the most significant job cuts took place. This creates a situation where we're looking at two seemingly conflicting narratives: continued job growth on one hand and massive job cuts on the other. The true scale of DOGE's impact will likely become clear in the coming months as we see the data for March and April. In the meantime, some state and local governments are taking steps to try and soften the blow. New York, for example, has launched a campaign to attract laid-off federal workers, highlighting its 7,000 open government positions. And in Maryland, there's been a surge in interest in worker retraining programs. But the big question remains, can these local efforts fully absorb the wave of displaced workers? It's a race against time, and the stakes are high not just for the individuals affected, but for the overall health of the U.S. economy. This brings us to another major economic concern that we really need to talk about: stagflation. Now, stagflation is a pretty nasty combination of slow economic growth, high unemployment, and rising inflation. It's kind of like trying to drive a car with the parking brake on while the gas pedal is floored. You're not going anywhere fast, and the engine is working overtime. Some investors are worried that President Trump's tariff policies, coupled with these massive job cuts, could have pushed the U.S. economy closer to this, dreaded stagflation scenario. So to understand why, let's break it down. Tariffs are essentially taxes on imported goods, and they can lead to higher prices for consumers. Think of that. If a company has to pay more for imported parts because of tariffs, they'll likely pass those costs on to you in the form of higher prices for their products. At the same time, mass layoffs due to DOGE cuts could mean fewer people have money to spend, leading to weaker demand. This combination of rising prices and falling demand is like a classic recipe for stagflation. And here's where things get even more complicated. This Friday's February jobs report, while it's expected to show continued job growth, is based on data collected before the most significant DOGE cuts took place. So it's kind of like looking at a picture of a calm sea right before a storm hits. The real impact of these job cuts, the potential resignation, and the delayed reporting, will likely become much clearer in the jobs reports for March and April. The situation is evolving super rapidly, with federal agencies scrambling to submit their plans for large-scale workforce reductions by March 13th. And to add another layer of complexity, a significant number of federal employees have reportedly taken the government's offer to resign, while still receiving pay through September. This creates a whole new set of unknowns. Will these workers find new jobs quickly? Will they stay in the workforce or choose early retirement? These factors make it extremely difficult difficult to predict the exact trajectory of the labor market in the coming months. However, one thing is clear. We're entering uncharted territory. This government downsizing, happening at a pace and scale we haven't seen before, has the potential to significantly reshape the employment landscapes. And it's not just the federal government that will be affected. The ripple effects are already being felt by private companies with government contracts, universities, nonprofits, and even service industries that cater to areas with a high concentration of federal workers. Imagine a small business owner in a town that's dominated by a federal agency. If that agency suddenly sheds a large chunk of its workforce, the local economy will feel the pain. Fewer people working means less money circulating, fewer customers for local businesses, and potentially even more job losses down the line. This uncertainty is already sending ripples through Wall Street. Analysts are anticipating higher unemployment rates and a potential dip in consumer spending as a result of these widespread job losses. And this adds to the growing list of concerns about the overall health of the U.S. economy. So while some experts believe that actions taken by DOGE aren't drastic enough to push the economy into a full-blown recession, there's a growing consensus that a noticeable impact on the labor market is imminent and will probably become clear in upcoming economic reports. It's a very delicate balancing act. And the consequences of getting it wrong could be pretty significant. This unprecedented downsizing of the federal government raises a whole bunch of questions. How will these job losses affect the economy as a whole? What are the long-term consequences for the affected workers and their families? And perhaps most importantly, what steps can be taken to mitigate potential negative impacts of this massive shift in the labor market? These are just some of the questions that we'll continue to explore as the situation unfolds. The February jobs report will give us a glimpse into the current state of the labor market, but the true impact of DOGE will take months to fully materialize. In the meantime, remember to look beyond the headlines and consider the broader implications of this government downsizing. How might it reshape the labor market in the long term? What new opportunities might emerge from this disruption? And what can we learn from the situation to better prepare for future economic challenges?